Life sometimes feels like we're trapped on a roller coaster going faster and faster, and that somehow humanity is struggling to keep up with technology. This has massive implications for our ability to innovate. But it's not keeping pace. Estimates vary, but only between 8 and 15% of organisations are innovating effectively. The rest fall into two camps. The first is the world of theatre, where people play at innovation without getting tangible results. The rest are those that have simply given up. But why is this? Lean Startup is a great tool. By turning innovation into a learning loop, we take the stigma out of failing. Its biggest drawback is it misses the start of the process. How do you know what to build? As academics describe it, what is the fuzzy front end? Sarasvathi's effectual reasoning provides a great answer, but it's challenging, suggesting as it does that what we learn in business school makes us worse innovators. Design and systems thinking is better at this, starting with empathise. But how does empathising get you from faster horses to a Model T? What if, as Steve Jobs famously quoted as saying, the customer doesn't know what she wants? With due attention to their respective limitations, the tools are not the real problem. It's the human factors. I love Diana's evocative depiction of thinking outside the box here. Lurid yellow is a most unattractive place for lingering, and what's anchoring the word outside? Of course, thinking outside the box is easy to say, but difficult to do because our mind finds it incredibly difficult to stop focusing on the thing we're trying to avoid. Thinking outside the box calls on us to put aside our habits and ignore the very things that make us who we are. The favoured approach to the start of the innovation process is divergent thinking, creating loads of different ideas in the hope that some of them turn out to be right. But what if they don't? This whole process seems to rely more on luck than judgment. So how do we escape the shackles of context? Whether Einstein ever said this is, to a degree, irrelevant. The point is that to innovate, we need to break our habits. We need to escape what psychologists call the situatedness of our cognition, the culture and environment that shapes the way we see the world, individually and collectively. So how do we make the leap from faster horse to Model T? How do we move our innovation from inconceivable to obvious? So let's now consider today's equivalent of the faster horse. A decade ago, ask anyone how they conceived of electric cars and they'd probably think of this. Or this. Great for the environment, yes, but would anyone who actually liked cars seriously consider them? Elon Musk's genius was to ask what would it take to get mainstream adoption of electric vehicles. And over the last 5 years he's created a whole new market for electric cars that people actually want to drive, with all of the other major car producers following suit. Why was something that's so obvious now inconceivable 5 years ago? Of course, Steve Jobs pulled off the same trick a decade ago. The idea of a pocket-sized laptop was inconceivable. How could you even interact with it? Yet people carry around a lot of stuff with them. Music players, cameras, filofaxes, flight tickets, maps, calculators and mobile phones. I could go on. Surely, if we could put the functionality of a laptop into a pocket-sized device and make it easy to use, it's not even that he needed new technology. It was all there, just waiting to be combined into a device that was so obvious that many of us today cannot live without our smartphones. So how do we pull off this magic trick? The answer, surprisingly, lies in how we teach. Teachers transfer knowledge, skills and capability to their learners. At the outset, the new skills are inconceivable to their learners. Take reading or maths at primary school, for example. With practice, though, these skills are tucked away in the habit part of our brain. We now don't have to think about how we read. It's just obvious to us. Now, how do we do that? Well, Researchers and philosophers have documented the process. I've only documented a few of them here, but read into socio-cultural thinking theory and there's a lot that tells us how to do innovation. My research project is to co-produce with 15 young people a learning programme that applies the principles of cultural psychology to the process of radical innovation. Unlike the current tools, it's relational in nature, relying on intersubjectivity to achieve closure of the diamond. We know when we've achieved closure because we achieve a meeting of minds. In the making of the video that follows, Zan and I did quite a few zigs and zags. I would suggest edit, Zan would incorporate them into the storyboard before we finally co-created something that we're both happy with. A great example of the social learning at the end of an innovation process.
Innovation is one of the most studied and written about practices in the world, yet lots of people and organisations really struggle to make it work for them. How is it all this material isn't making it easier? It's because we've become accustomed to thinking about innovation in unhelpful ways. A lot of us think that successful innovation is about following processes to solve problems and create solutions, experimenting, then inventing the next big thing and becoming a world-renowned entrepreneur. These ideas have culminated in a culture that champions novelty over adoption. Popular innovative exercises like thinking outside the box and blue sky thinking are symptomatic of this culture and have led many a would-be innovator to focus on the wrong thing, making new products rather than addressing pressing problems. Being new doesn't make something innovative. No one ever said that novelty is the mother of invention. Oftentimes, this means they force unworthy innovation ideas through rounds of validation. Ultimately, these ideas have caused many practitioners to see innovation as being a solely outcome-led, deliberate process. And this isn't good for anybody. We need to look at innovation differently from how we usually see it. Innovation is not a deliberate procedure for a single successful outcome, but an emergent discourse wherein we begin to understand the problems people face and what these users want or need, even if they can't articulate it yet. What do all successful innovations have in common? They are adopted. And the most successful ones take off because users are able to adopt them instinctively. So if adoption is innovation's end goal, how can we begin to achieve this? By thinking ambidextrously, switching between scientific and social reasoning to innovate for mass appeal. Thinking ambidextrously helps us to escape the pitfalls of a novelty-led approach to innovation so that we can understand and deliver the effects end users want. Ambidextrous thinking involves divergent and convergent processes, starting a dialogue between scientific and entrepreneurial learning processes to aid the generation and application of innovation. By reducing a problem or an existing practice down to its simplest form, divergent thinking built on research, theories and formulas used to solve similar issues help practitioners to break free of contextual constraints and ensures that the ideas that emerge provide a solution with tangible benefits. From here, social thinking kicks in. Explorations and ideas are refined and recontextualized with cultural perspectives to facilitate the adoption of the innovation by the end users. Done well, this allows them to instinctively use innovations and even find new ways they might be applied themselves. Let's apply ambidextrous thinking to the example of Henry Ford and the Model T. Ford saw that ordinary people could not imagine owning their own car. They understood that they were only accessible to the super rich. All Ford's future customers could think of wanting was a stronger and faster horse. Ford thought divergently and decontextualized the issue. He came to understand the effects his potential customers were after. They wanted to do things faster and more efficiently, like their wealthier contemporaries. This led Ford to the fundamental question: how can ordinary people do things quicker and better? And then he was able to repose the problem. How can I make an affordable car? He innovated by thinking divergently and created the production line, producing cars for a fraction of the cost they were before. Then, thinking convergently, Ford's Model T was then recontextualized as affordable to the mass market through advertising. Divergent, convergent, practical and social thought processes co-created the Model T Ford. This method of production enabled the effects ordinary people wanted, and was an incredibly successful innovation. Not to mention, one that revolutionized industry and allowed more people than ever to own vehicles and instinctively find new uses for them. Who knows what we'll innovate for in the future? One thing's for sure, when we start thinking ambidextrously, we focus on that all-important element, adoption, and extend the boundaries of what's possible for everyone.